Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 68 of Podcast vs. Enemies, a Destiny Massive Breakdown show. My name is Saint Kabr, and joining me, as always, are Court and Impetus. How are you guys doing? What have you been up to in and out of Destiny this past week?
Hello, lads. Impetus Saint. We all hope you're all doing well this weekend. So Impetus and I, we did a few GMs with a special guest, shall we say. Did a high-level deep dive as well with Bungie's Chris Proctor. Hopefully get a little dungeon run in at some point too, but we were going for those debt-loaded question rolls. I didn't get any of note anyway this time around, but I think Impetus did. Other than that, in terms of Destiny, I've just been doing the usual bits and bobs. Outside of Destiny, DMZ, Warzone, Crusader Kings 3, got my new rig set up over the last few days. I'm going to be installing some games that have been long on my to-do list, like Jedi Survivor, Replay, Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC. It looks glorious. Last of Us, God of War, all that fancy stuff, all that nerdy game stuff. Impetus, what have you been up to?
Yes, I did indeed lock down some solid adept-loaded question rolls with the help of Court and Chris Proctor. So that was a lot of fun running through Fallen Saber. It's always a nice GM, nice and small and intense, and definitely very lethal. Going into Grandmasters this early in the season, I was not prepared for the lethality, despite the fact that I do this activity every season. You know, it's just one of those things where, you know, I've been running deep dives and salvages and a few other playlist activities to knock out seasonal challenges. So jumping into this was very much a reminder of what in-game PvE can feel like when everything hurts a lot. But we had some good times. We were getting some drops. We did have Iron Banner this past week. I'm planning on touching that a little bit on Monday, but other than that, kind of been playing some other games this past week. Getting ready for Last Wish to be in the rotator next week, so I'll definitely do some more runs of that to lock down my final few weapons to unlock for crafting. So other than that, though, I've been good. Been having a good time here, enjoying summer. How about yourself, Saint?
Yeah, similarly, jumped in for the one Last Wish run of this week. Got a couple extra red borders in there. Always love to see that. Always great to see people learning Riven legit. It's never too late, and it's really not that hard. So if you have been farming Last Wish and you've never done Riven legit, just give it a try sometime. I think you'd be surprised by how easy you can manage some stuff like that. Also farmed for some loaded questions, getting those Saber GM times down. I got a good control burst roll. Still looking for kind of that classic reservoir burst roll. We've got overflow in this thing. We'll talk about that in some details in a minute, but plenty of good options on the new loaded question. Really been enjoying using Arbalest with passive least resistance and Hothead. The Trace Rifle, I mean, not only is it overload this season, which is great, but the other artifact burst that you've got at your disposal will just make arc special weapons it just absolutely shred through crowds of mobs. And you don't even need to use Volt Shot because you can jolt targets and use One for All at the same time. I mean, it's just great. Really enjoying making the most out of those artifact mods this season. But other than that, I'm still playing through Halo Infinite. I think I'm pretty far through that game. I'd say I'm probably most of the way through the campaign at this point, if I had to make a guess. I'm getting sidetracked by some side missions and stuff, but still enjoying that. Still enjoying grappling around, trying to string together some movement. And also touched back into some DMZ this week. It kind of been on my mind ever since Marathon got announced and all that's coming up. Man, where's the release date? You know, that's like the one thing on my mind these days with Marathon. But this is not MMB. This is DMB. So let's bring it back in. Court, who do we have to thank before we jump into today's episode?
Soon, maybe soon. Yes, we don't have any new patrons or any reviews to shout out this week, but we do have our amazing sponsors, which I'll list off here. So we have A Modern Viking, Askin Monk, Bryce Roney, Deacon, IMK Rose, Moonlight, Shazo, and This Moment. Thank you very much for your kind generosity. Just as a reminder, you can send us all kinds of feedback directly to any of our socials or via the DMB Discord server. Positive, critical, and constructive feedback helps with the trajectory of the podcast and how we present and break down builds, activities, and much more in the PV sandbox for all kinds of Destiny players. We also want to extend a special thanks and appreciation to everyone that supports PvE, whether that is downloading and listening to our show, discussing it in the Discord server, or supporting us via Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, if you'd like to support the show, please visit DestinyMassiveBreakdowns.com and click on the link to Patreon. You'll get access to members-only channels in Discord, behind-the-scenes information, input on the future of the show, plus access to our legendary annual merch drop. Wonderful stuff. Impetus, what are we talking about this week?
Yeah, so we thought we would take a look at some in-game weapons for PvE and PvP in terms of the sources, that is. So we're talking Nightfall and Trials weapons, both from this season and last season, since we didn't get to touch on the new additions back then. So got 8 weapons in total, 4 from each of those playlists respectively that we'll be talking about, going over roles. Again, for PvE, even though some of these weapons do drop from a PvP playlist. So that's what we've got on the table. All of these are weapons that can roll with an adept drop. Sometimes that will make a difference, sometimes it won't, but we'll get into that shortly. So we're going to go first with our Nightfall weapons. We do have some origin traits that are unique to these weapons. We're going to talk about all 4 of the playlist-specific ones right now, and then if there's a weapon that has an additional origin trait, we'll bring that up when we get to that weapon in particular. But I'll start us off here with our 4 origin traits. The 2 that show up on these Nightfall weapons are Stunning Recovery and Vanguard's Vindication. Vanguard's Vindication is the general Vanguard origin trait that shows on all Vanguard weapons, not necessarily for our Nightfall ones. On weapon kill, you will gain 7 health points. There is no cooldown for it, very simple. The origin trait that shows up uniquely to the Nightfall weapons is Stunning Recovery. That reads, stunning a champion grants the following for 3 seconds. It will refill 25% of your magazine capacity and restores 60 health points and triggers health regeneration. That is plus 40 to the recovery. The champion's stun trigger must either come from a weapon with the Stunning Recovery that can stun, for an example, Anti-Barrier Sidearm, or external ability stuns, Jolt for Overload, Blind for Unstoppable, etc., while the weapon is currently equipped. So this does not activate in your back pocket. You will need it out and either using it to stun a champion or having an external ability stunning a champion. Our 2 Trials origin traits, that's going to be Alacrity, which is the unique Trials one, and then One Quiet Moment, which is our Crucible playlist one. I'll start with One Quiet Moment here. While out of combat, you will gain the following. That is plus 40 reload speed and a 0.95 reload duration multiplier. That translates to about 5% faster reload. Out of combat is active after not having dealt or received damage for around about 5 seconds. Any kills reduce your out-of-combat timer to 1.5 seconds until damage is dealt or received, and this does trigger even if the weapon is stowed. Now, Alacrity is our Trials one. While you are the last Guardian standing, or in any activity as a solo player, so that's kind of the PvE slant here, that will work on Lost Sectors, if you're soloing a dungeon, etc., you will gain the following benefits. That is plus 20 range, plus 20 stability, plus 50 reload speed, and plus 10 aim assist. All right, those are the 4 origin traits. Again, one of the weapons we're going to cover does have an extra one that's unique to it, so we'll get to that in a bit here. But we're going to start things off with a Buzzard. Saint, do you want to read out what Buzzard brings to the table?
Yeah, so Buzzard is a kinetic adaptive frames, 300 RPM, just well-rounded stats, kind of the descriptor there. Like Impetus mentioned, this will come with both Stunning Recovery and Vanguard's Vindication. When we take a look at its base stats, we have the Keening and Allied Demand. Start off with range here. 36 range is pretty middling. Keening is the highest, just a couple points above at 38. It's going to have 67 stability, which is very good. It's tied for highest with Allied Demand, which I believe is the Iron Banner sidearm. right? Yep. 51 handling, highest by 1 point over the Keening, and 30 reload speed, tied for highest with allied demand. So it is probably the overall best sidearm stat package here, but honestly, pretty tight competition. Not a huge gap here in a lot of these stat bands. When we talk about barrels and mags, barrel, it's hard to ignore full bore. If you're gonna want to push this range out in any meaningful way, you're definitely going to need some range perks as well, but full bore just offers such a large stat bump with its plus 15 range. Probably going to be the go-to there. On the magazine side, honestly, any of our rounds, traits, high cal, ricochet, armor piercing are going to be the staples here. When we take a look at our main traits here, we're definitely, considering range is kind of like the Achilles heel of sidearms, because if you've seen any of the primary DPS charts or anything like that Mossy's been putting out, you'll know that sidearms are in an incredibly strong position, but only when you are in position close enough to your enemies. On column 3, we've got Encore, Overflow, Perpetual Motion, and 4 times a Charm. And then in column 4, we have a few decent damage options here with Frenzy, Kinetic Tremors, and Swashbuckler. Now, when this first hit the shelves, so to say, Kinetic Tremors was a definitely a highly sought after perk, but I don't know if that is going to be a trait that we're going to be recommending on this. Court, why or why not would somebody want to be using a Kinetic Tremors roll on this thing?
Well, so Kinetic Tremors each weapon has a requirement for the hits to activate said burst of kinetic energy. For sniper rifles, it's 3. For hand cannons and scout rifles, it's 6. And for pulse rifles and sidearms, it's 12. So that's a lot of shots with your sidearm. And considering the base magazine size of this is 15. We're looking at 100% of your magazine, practically 100% of your magazine to activate it. So it's not quite it, Chief. I think Kinetic Tremors is more of a scout rifle, maybe even hand cannon type of perk. Whereas, sidearms they're not it, Chief, when it comes to Kinetic Tremors. I will say, in terms of how Kinetic Tremors works here, the shockwaves do inherit the weapon's passive kinetic damage bonus. So obviously for Buzzard, it's 10%. And its combatant's damage scaling, which is fairly above average when it comes to sidearms. But I think the activation period or requirement is just it's not it for Buzzard, unfortunately. You guys got any comments about Kinetic Tremors?
I
think that's a no.
See why I can see why they made it, but it's really unfortunate because I feel like you really got to rock Overflow in column 3 if you want to make the most of it on this, and that's the Nightfall weapons do roll with the Adept variants do roll with an extra perk in column 3, so you've got a pretty good chance of getting Overflow, but it's whenever you're looking for a very specific combo in column 3 and column 4, that's really hurting your farming chances statistically, right? You're just going to have to get used to running it a lot or spending a lot of engrams to go get that roll. But yeah, I mean, they could bump it down to I think they need to split sidearms off from pulse rifles, but they don't need to go down hand cannons and scouts because I can understand you're putting out a lot of bullets pretty quickly. So you could definitely proc Kinetic Tremors fast, but maybe take it down to 9 or 10 bullets. That doesn't seem too punishing. I mean, base max 15 bullets. It's brutal. I'd have to look at all the different sidearm archetypes and see what the mag size looks like and the rounds per minute. Because it's a brutal trade-off. And I don't know. Maybe sidearm usage has risen enough where they feel like they can get away with this. But me personally, I'm just not. I can't bring myself to do that.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. When you're talking 75% of a mag to trigger a single perk, that's like, I hope you procced it on the right enemy, and I hope they were in the middle of a group, because if not, it's just kind of gonna be a waste. And I was talking about this just a little bit before we started recording today about Randy's throwing knife. I've been playing some Iron Banner a little bit this week as well, and got some Randy's throwing knives to drop, and it feels fine when you proc on like Randy's, for example. It's got about 18 bullets in the mag, takes 6 to proc. Okay, that's fine. You switch over to spare rations, and it's the same 6 bullets to proc, and it's got almost half the RPM and about 2/3 of the magazine size. And really, I think I want to live in a world where kinetic tremors is a viable trait, and I think that if they really took a gradient look kind of across the archetypes for its activators, it could bubble up. Right, but it's just DOA with a 12-shot, 75% mag requirement of base. And a trait here that I'm probably pretty interested in PvE that I normally would not really be is Encore, because it's giving a lot of buffs, right? 5 range ace ability and about 1.25% accuracy cone negation or shrinking every stack you get. The accuracy cone size is fine. It's not really interested in that, but the range and stability is really nice. If you activate Frenzy, you're maxing out your handling and reload speed, which is really great because sidearms, they're if you take a look at some of these charts from Mossy, we can link down below. They're super dependent on that reload speed, right? And their DPS is scaling off of that. You put in some Encore stacks on there, and you're getting your stability up really high, which is helping you land crits, which again is leading to better DPS. And then you're getting your range cranked all the way up to be able to hit 16.5, 17 meters, which is pretty solid. And I think that'll be my ideal one. I think the only role that I ended up keeping was Perpetual Motion and Frenzy was the only one I got lucky with. But yeah, this is a weapon I would consider Encore on, which is pretty just not usually seen as a PvE trait, I feel like.
Yeah, I was playing around with the stats here. So 1 stack of Encore and Full Bore in either the 3 rounds perks, Ricochet, High Cal, Armor Piercing, or Light Mag sits you at 16.04 meters when you're ADS. You can push that with 4 stacks. 16.5. So you really just need 1 stack of Encore to get you over that 16 meter ADS before damage fall off. But yeah, Encore and Frenzy, I think Saint is a great call for just juicing the heck out of the stats, man. That is a lot of buffs, a lot of green on D2 Foundry. So I think that's probably the safer role. I mean, you're on the money there. That's yeah.
And plus, it's like this is it's a weapon that you're supposed to be killing ads with, right? And might as well lean into that kind of role. Court, any thoughts? You've been using Buzzard at all since last season?
No, I haven't actually managed to get one to really drop over this season or last season, whether it's been the Adept variant or not. So I've not been able to play around with it, but yeah, I'd probably go for that. Frenzy, I just clicked on activate for Frenzy and all the bars go green, and it's like, yeah, this is great brain juice. Just seeing all these stats go max. Yeah, I don't have much else to say, but yeah, Frenzy's definitely the play.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, hell, you know what else is the play? Goodness gracious. Loaded question. Talk about a Nightfall weapon here. This bad boy is back. Dropping from Nightfalls this time around. You got the Stunning Recovery and the Vanguard's Vindication origin traits. Again, all of these weapons that we're going to be talking about, not craftable. This is an ARC high impact frame fusion rifle. Those sit at a whopping 960 charge time there. High impact perk, slow firing, high damage. The weapon is a little bit more accurate when stationary, moving slowly, and aiming down sights. That does not come into play a whole lot in PvE typically, but when extra accuracy does help, especially with one of the roles that we're going to be going for here. We do have 2 other ARC high impact frame fusion rifles that have come out recently that we can compare this to. That's Mida's Reckoning from Kingsfall, and then Wizened Rebuke, which is dropping from Iron Banner. This is going to be kind of an interesting one. They're very close statistically here. So the range on loaded question is going to be 52, and that is tied for the highest. But Wizened only has 51, so very close. Stability 25, that is middling. Wizened has 28. Handling of 25 is the highest. Wizened has 21. Impetus has 19. So again, not a huge gap here. And then reload speed of 19, that's right in the middle. Impetus has 18, Wizened has 20. So really, when you're just looking at the stats, you could go with any one of these. There's bonuses to all of them, I feel like, pluses and minuses, but they're all so diminished. Looking at our barrels and mags here, I am going to recommend probably fluted, just to get that handling and stability up here. That's going to take you up to 30 stability, 40 handling. That's always nice. I do feel like you could probably go small bore if you want to touch the stability and also touch the range. This thing does have great range when you're aiming down sights. Column 3, this is where things get really exciting. So we are looking at autoloading holster, overflow, envious assassin, demolitionist. And then in column 4, I think the two perks that everyone's going for PvE are going to be the burst perks. That's reservoir burst and our new controlled burst. Very excited to see the original role return and still be quite a dominant role, honestly. That was the autoloading holster reservoir burst. Really, really excellent, but I think controlled burst is probably what's got a lot of people talking. That's very much a boss slash champion, stun to champion slash mini boss perk, doing damage there. So again, if you don't know what that is, landing every shot in a burst grants this weapon increased damage. That's 20% increased and a 10% decreased charge time for 2 seconds. Very, very nice perk here, and a lot of complementary perks in column 3. The role that I was chasing that I did land was an overflow controlled burst. Really, really like that. That's more shots for me to proc controlled burst. And I did get a secondary demo on that role, so that's very nice too. I can throw a grenade, immediately reload, and get back to controlled burst. That would be nice, but personally, I would say if you get any 2 of those 4 to land with one of the burst perks, I mean, you're good. Like, there's not a whole lot to debate here as to what we're all chasing. Unless I could be wrong. I mean, do you guys think there's an argument for Frenzy? Because that's also in column 4, or is that not really the appeal compared to our burst perks?
It's funny because we were just talking about how it's like, oh, you take Buzzard, you throw Frenzy on there, all of a sudden it's just juicing. And like, don't get me wrong, loaded question is a weapon that could absolutely use it with such low base handling and reload speed, right? But I think that what is negating Frenzy from being a stronger choice in the 4th column is all of your reload perks, right? When you have overflow, you have demo, and you have autoloading holster, it's really eating away at the benefit that you're getting from Frenzy, I feel like. And like demo and Frenzy is it's a fine role, right? You clear out some enemies with that, but yeah, I definitely see maybe I'm not going to use it for boss DPS, but if fusion rifles are ever back on the table as an anti-champion weapon, which we've seen before, I bet we're going to see again, some kind of unstop fusion rifle, overload fusion rifle. This is a weapon that is totally poised to just shred through some champs, right? You get a couple people running loaded question with controlled burst, autoloading, or overflow, or whatever kind of reload perk of your choice there, and you could be shredding through some enemies, through some mini bosses, through some champions. Great choice there. But I am also very nostalgic for Reservoir Burst and its ability to like clear out enemies. This is the weapon that like sold me on fusion rifles, and I think many others in PvE in the first place. So hard to deny the nostalgia there. Court, how about you? What are you thinking? Same?
Yeah, pretty much echo what you guys have been saying. I did get a demo pugilist role during the runs the other day with Impetus and Chris. And I was pretty surprised because I'm looking at the weapons that have that combo, demo in the first and pugilist in the second slot. You've got New Pacific Epitaph, Wilder Flight, both loaded questions, and no survivors. And then if you flip it the other way around, it was Zalo's the King's Hall hand cannon and something else which has escaped me. So it's an interesting combo if you're all into abilities, then you can go down that route. If you're doing a lot of ad clear, you're not exploiting the reservoir burst plus overflow or envious assassin kind of omega damage plus many explosions. But if you're building into an ability type build, then demo, as a reminder, does give you 20% with fusion rifles instead of that 10%. So just 5 kills, you get your grenade back. And then obviously if you want to reload, you can toss that grenade and you get the instant reload as well. Pugilist Pugilist also has that, so fusion rifles gets that 20% instead of the 10%. So 5 kills and you'll have your abilities back. Maybe even just 4 with how cooldowns work. Plus you get the melee damage grants 35 handling for 3 seconds. So you can go down that route. I was surprised to get it because I'm thinking I could maybe play into this because I've got a number of arc fusion rifles that do the whole jazz. Because I'm looking at Wise and Rebuke, which I use mostly for PvP, but PvE it's got Volt Shot. It's got Vorpal in there as well, and Midas Reckoning, which is obviously our craftable high impact, which we've recommended before. That has full prep. It's got Reservoir Burst in there as well, surrounded Golden Tricorn, which is that massive 50% increase of damage when you're doing your grenade or powered melee. Very easy to do that in Arc. Arc is very raw power. So yeah, that was a little kind of unique combination that I was like, I'm going to recommend that on today's podcast. But yeah, absolutely think, ALH, Overflow, Envious Assassin, Reservoir Burst. Yeah, Control Burst if you want to go down that route, but who doesn't like explosions and increased damage?
Yeah, man, and that Overflow, as a reminder, is up to double the magazine. So if you are rocking Overflow with Reservoir Burst, you can get up to, I believe, 6 shots of overcharge, right? Yeah, dude. Good.
Well, and
Lord.
Reservoir Burst does add 1 to your magazine stat. So it's actually with Overflow and Reservoir Burst active, you are sitting at a +7, a total of 12 without any magazine perks. So, and I did forget to mention magazine perks. We want enhanced battery or even ionized battery. Ionized will take your reload speed down to 0, but again, with these kind of reload options that we have in Column 3, I think that's a worthwhile trade-off.
What is that? 16 bursts with ionized? 8 reservoir burst shots in a row?
Yeah.
Is it enough? Is it enough?
With Reservoir Burst, ionized, Overflow, that is 11 shots for a total of 16.
Good Lord.
Good GM weapon, though. I mean, love that. I haven't had a
came
lot of those
back
recently.
in a good way.
Came back in a great way. You know what didn't come back in a great way?
Ooh.
Oh, dear.
Hit us.
Yeah, it is the Swarm. It is the Arc high impact frame machine gun. It's, you can tell by our voices, we're not entirely interested or excited about this one. But I'll give you some stats here. Obviously, it rolls Stun and Recovery and Vanguard's Vindication. So if you are using this as an ad clear, then you can absolutely use Vanguard's Vindication just to get that health up, keep that health sustained. We've got some kind of comparisons. So comparing it to Terminus Horizon from the Spire dungeon. Yep. Yes, completely forgot about that particular dungeon, and Seventh Seraph Saw, which we haven't seen for a while. So really it's just Terminus Horizon that's the kind of big comparison point here. So range, we've got 69, which is the highest. Terminus is at 64. Stability is 33. Again, it's highest. Terminus has 25. Handling is 35, which puts it in the middle. Terminus has 38, and the reload speed is also highest. And Saw has 31. So statistically speaking, this is like a great high impact machine gun. But it's that's where things end with the Swarm, because the perks are they're not it. To be honest,
they're not there.
Now, for the barrels, when it comes to machine guns, barrels and magazines, for magazines, you want to go for something that's going to increase your magazine level, preferably not extended mag because you do get that malice. So we're looking at attack or flared. But for the barrels, probably looking at fluted just to give that +5 stability and handling. If you like range, then you could go full bore. You've got polygonal rifling, which is that +10 stability. But really, again, when it comes to machine gun, it doesn't make much of difference. For the perks, though, columns 3 and 4, we've got Feeding Frenzy, which is great for a machine gun that just feeds off kills. So 1 stack of Feeding Frenzy gives you that +8 reload speed, then 3% increased, faster reload. Then it's +50, +60, +75, +100. Also 10%. 13%, 16%, and then 20% reload scaler. So you get a nice reload speed of 100 plus whatever the scaler is. You've got well-rounded in here as well as a potential candidate for, if you're using your grenades a lot. At 2 stacks of well-rounded, it's +20 range, stability, and handling. So a nice healthy stat bump there on top of it already intrinsically being a nice stat machine gun. But over in the sort of damage perk, you've got Dragonfly, which I kind of forget that still is a perk these days when you've got Volt Shot and Incandescent, those kind of elemental type perks. And then you have Golden Tricorn is here. I am a big stan of Golden Tricorn, so that could be an option at 50%. Again, this being an arc weapon, it's very easy to get that 1 stack and then 2 stacks, and then just sustain that with a machine gun. And then you've got Target Lock in here as well, but I think we've suggested Target Lock for other machine guns, rapid fires. I think those type of weapons contribute to Target Lock a lot more sustainably and efficiently compared to high impacts. So I'm not as interested in Target Lock for this particular weapon. So it'd probably be well-rounded and Golden Tricorn. Saint, you got any kind of additional thoughts here for the Swarm? It's down and out, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like its 4th column is fine, but the 3rd column is just a swing and a miss for me. And I think that is like kind of what does it here. If I'm looking at 3rd column and I basically I see Genesis, which is like interesting, right? And that sounds interesting, but it's just not. It's like too niche. In terms of like general content, breaking shields, I don't feel like is going to be enough to make this like a go-to trait. Feeding Frenzy is like good stat wise, Feeding Frenzy and then a well-rounded, both good like stat wise for your reload and stuff like that. But just not quite it. And it's got like offhand strike in the 3rd column. Is this a crucible weapon? I guess I think that is like where it's targeted towards. Yeah, but I don't know. And then I see like Dragonfly in column 4. But you look at Terminus, you got Dragonfly in column 3, and you got other damage. You got Adrenaline Junkie in column 4. If you could take Dragonfly from the 3rd column and keep Golden Tricorn in the 4th column, okay, there's a role I'm interested in, right? It's got immediate ad clear utility. In your first kill, you're getting explosions, good for ad kill. If you, work this right, I'm an Arc Titan a lot of the times in these GMs this season. So there's like some viability there, but having such a weak 3rd column, really, it kind of kills the vibe.
This stings for me because I do have the original Swarm Adept with Bottomless Grief and One for All. That has been my arc machine gun of choice for so long. I knew that they were bringing it back, and I thought to myself, well, surely they're not going to get rid of One for All. Like, they generally like to preserve the strongest perks when a weapon gets, refreshed. They did the same thing with Hung Jury and keeping, Firefly and Explosive Payload and stuff like that when it got refreshed, I think, the first time. So I was confident. I knew that obviously Bottomless Grief had been phased out, so we'd be getting some. I was hoping for Stats for All, One for All, because we haven't seen that combo recently. But not only did that not show up, they took One for All off. I'm just gutted because Terminus is better.
So let me list the column 3s and 4 perks from the old Swarm. So in column 3 we had Outlaw, Killing Wind, DSR, Surplus, Unrelenting, and then Bottomless Grief. And then column 4 we had Zen Moment, Slideways, Tap the Trigger, One for All, Dragonfly, Vorpal Weapon. I'm
Dude,
kind
you
of
took Unrelenting away?
Yeah, Unrelenting was one I was like, that's why I was bringing this up, because I was like, oh yeah, this had Unrelenting. So like, I don't know why Tap the Trigger's there. They kept Tap the Trigger but removed One for All. Or Slideways was phased out for I suppose Golden Tricorn, which is great. That's fine. But I think you mentioned there, like, having Dragonfly in column 3 would have been a nice kind of compromise of, okay, no, that's fine. I'm okay with Dragonfly being in column 3, but yeah, I mean, Terminus Horizon's got that, so...
I'm just going to go farm for my offhand stripe, tap the trigger build, so I can just live out my cowboy fantasies in the Crucible, beaming people across the map.
Dude, like Feeding Frenzy Golden Tricorn is a great roll on a machine gun. You will fry enemies with Golden Tricorn ×2 on a machine gun. Like, don't get us wrong, it's not like there's nothing to chase, but again, this is not, these weapons are not easy to farm, right? It all depends on the GM that this gets matched to, and you're going for like 1 perk in column 3 and 1 perk in column 4. It is going to be tough statistically for those of you listening to go get that exact roll, which is why we like to compare these weapons based on the options that they have in column 3 and 4. And there's no options on Swarm. And we had options on the original version, which is why this is so frustrating. All right. Maybe the third time it comes back around, right?
Yeah. We're just beating a dead Swarm at this point. Let's jump into our other new weapon for the season, the Braytech Osprey. This is a Void high impact frame rocket launcher at 15 RPM. The frame bonus, despite the fact that it says high impact, is actually kind of like the middling damage archetype. So 10% more than precisions, but 10% less than adaptives and aggressive. Intrinsically high blast radius and high handling stats with a pretty low velocity stat. This outlook on the Braytech Osprey doesn't start off great, but I think it may be redeemed a little bit later on in the discussion here. When we are looking at stats, it is statistically it's worst in group for high impact rocket launchers. Other options include things like Tomorrow's Answer, Roar of the Bear, Sleepless. They're all beating out the Braytech Osprey. I know we've got some reserve info in here. Cord, I'll pass it off to you real quick. How is this thing comparing when we look at rocket reserves and total ammo capacity and stuff like that?
Yeah, just before I talk about this, the RPM is actually 46.5. It's not.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not the same in game. Those things are lying, completely lying. So for high impacts, it's 46.5 RPM. So reserves. So it's pretty much in the middle. Let's compare it with the Hothead, which is an adaptive, so it's 10% increased damage versus Braytech. It's exact same reserve loadout. So with no field prep, it's 7, 8, 9, 9. So that's base, 1 reserve, 2 reserve, 3 reserve. And with field prep, it's 8, 9, 10, 10. So you get that maximum ammo capacity of 10 at 2 reserves. With Braytech, same as Hothead. There is another high impact that does better, and that's Code Duello. It's not exactly easy to farm because it is technically still dropping within the Dares of Eternity. But beyond that, it's fairly difficult to get a good roll, considering it's got quite a vast perk selection, and also the loot pool is it's not just Code Duello. It's about 50 other things, so good luck. But if you do have a good roll code Joello from a few seasons ago, a few years ago, that is 7, 8, 9, 10 with no fuel prep, and then 8, 9, 10, 10, the same as before. So it's much more ammo efficient if you don't have fuel prep, but you do have three times of the reserve mods. Quite expensive, 3 reserve mods, but still, it's an efficient ammo capacity weapon. And also, compare that to Red Herring, Bump in the Night. They're obviously different frames as well. They're adaptive and aggressive, respectively. It's 7, 8, 9, 9. Fuel prep, it's 8, 9, 10, 10. So same as Braytech and Hotheads. But the big kind of special thing for Red Herring and Bump is that you can obviously enhance fuel prep, which makes it crazily efficient with ammo. And the reserves are 9, 10, 10, 10. So you get it 1 reserve with Red Herring and Bump in the Night. It's why I suggest Red Herring and Bump in the Night with a lot of content when we talk about it, because that's just crazily efficient of that magazine capacity, plus picking up ammo from the ground gives you that maximum +3 if it's a normal purple drop. So in comparison, it's middling. It's in the middle. It's kind of standard. It's average. When it comes to, I know you're going to suggest some perks here, but when it comes to bipod magazine sizes and reserves, and just comparing it with Envious Assassin, like Cold Comfort, which we talked about last episode, it has at base 3 in the magazine, if you can get that trigger up, and then with bipod it's 5. This is the only weapon that has bipod and field prep that can drop together in different columns. So we, at the time of this episode, Braytech is not currently dropping. It's due to drop by the time this episode goes out, just judging by the scheduling. So this is all kind of theoretical. We don't have the actual physical data set in front of us to just double check this. But if you do pair bipod and fuel prep, the reserves, again, base 1, 2, 3, they go to 13, 14, 15, and either 15 or 16. We're not 100% sure here, just because it's on the cusp of it having quite a high inventory stat size, that could be 16 rockets if you pair fuel prep and bipod. That's total ammo capacity. So 16 rockets. 15 is nothing to shout at as well. That's crazy. It's the same as Cold Comfort with 3 reserves and bipod. But you could get 15 with 2 reserves, fuel prep and bipod. All right, back to you, Saint. What are you recommending for the perks and the barrels and the mag?
Yeah, on starting off with the barrels here, it's I'm definitely looking at our velocity, right? You know, our base velocity is gonna be 41, which, as we've talked about, like the harder enemies are to track, the more important like a high velocity stat becomes, and the easier to disconnect those shots. Hard launch is going to hurt our stability a little bit and blast radius a little bit, but those just aren't really a concern with the rocket launcher, and it is going to give us 15 to velocity. And then quick launch, also very good option, is going to give us 10 velocity, but also 15 to handling, which I would say is a little bit more of a valuable stat when it comes to rocket launchers. On the magazine side, it's hard to ignore impact casing. It's 10% impact damage and about 2.2% total damage. 2.2% damage may not sound like a ton, but hey, like when it comes to boss DPS bases, like 2% is 2%. Not going to scoff at that. And then other than that, it's pretty much high velocity rounds for plus 10 velocity and plus 10 reload speed, which is also a really nice one. I would definitely say in terms of value, that's offering a ton on your actual mag perk there. When we get into our main traits, we've talked about bipod in the 4th column, but we also have some pretty interesting traits in the 3rd column. You've got auto-loading holster, Envious Assassin, field prep, and cluster bomb in the 3rd column, which I believe is the first time I've ever seen cluster bomb in the 3rd column in a rocket like this. And then in the fourth column, Bipod is definitely standout trait. There's a few other options here, like Golden Tricorn Chain Reaction, Frenzy, and Lasting Impression, as well as Destabilizing Rounds, which I think, again, is the first time that we've seen that trait on a rocket launcher. I'll just start and say that the whole Cluster Bombs Destabilizing Rounds trait combo is very interesting because this is like a crowd control type of a role on a rocket launcher, which is strange. This is not their forte, right? This is not the role that your rocket launcher is typically filling. So kind of interesting to see that they would go that way. Cluster Bombs in the third column is also interesting because it's like a crowd control perk. Technically, I think you could qualify this as a damage perk. This is adding damage onto your weapon. I don't know exactly how much, but I think that there's probably some other I don't know, maybe more interesting or potentially more viable DPS options here, because I mean, really, that's what you should be using your rocket launcher for. Impetus, you're taking a Braytech Osprey into a DPS phase. What are you on the lookout for here?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm trying to figure out, because I'm only interested in field prep bipod, right?
Okay.
What would be the damage scenario? I don't think I would do it in a raid because we're on a timer, right? For boss fights, there's only a certain amount of damage phases that you get before the wipe occurs. So having all these extra rockets would be nice in, say, a master variant. Just for being ammo efficient with however many bricks my team and I can get to spawn. But with the fact that this is a high impact, plus the fact that bipod is hurting my damage already, I don't think I want to take that chance. I think I'd rather go with an adaptive and aggressive and try to just put out as much damage as possible. And if I have to swap to a special weapon partway through that final damage phase because I'm out of heavy ammo, I'll just take that risk. But I don't know, man. Maybe if I'm trying to solo a dungeon or do a Nightfall, this would be a very ammo efficient option, especially think with like Ghosts, if I get that rally right off the rip there to start off that boss fight. I don't know what heavy bricks I'm going to get. Maybe I could get really unlucky, but knowing I could have up to 15 or 16 rockets there for however many damage phases, I don't know. I'm not seeing a ton of value in practice. I can understand on paper it looks exciting to say I've got 15 to 16 rockets on my rocket launcher, but right now bipod is not cutting it. We know it's getting buffed. Maybe the buff makes it more competitive, but yeah, I think I'm going to need at least a void surge in whatever activity I take this into to really help me out here to counteract bipod. And the fact that I do have what's it called? Red herring, with enhanced field prep, right? Like that's the comparisons are not doing this any favors. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's an interesting option. If we do get that 16, that could be really exciting, but I'm gonna have to wait and see because I'm not really jumping to go grab this weapon just yet. Court, how are you feeling about this? I mean, I know you want it for the science, but are you gonna hold on to it if it's only 15 rockets, not 16? How are you feeling about the potential of Braytech?
I mean, having 15 or 16 rockets with 2 or 3 reserve mods is crazy to think of. But for the exact same reasons what you were saying about ammo economy, Red Herring is an adaptive void rocket launcher. And it's fairly easy to get. It's not a seasonal weapon, so you're not at the whim of, oh, well, I can't craft this until it shows up and then I have to put in some deep sight. You can go and craft this fairly easy, do a bunch of throne world activities, and you'll have it in no time. If you haven't played a lot of Witch Queen, then now's your chance to get that really crazy ammo efficient rocket launcher. This has the potential. It absolutely has the potential, depending on what they do to bipod. I think we haven't spoke about this before, but bipod does have a plus to the 5 negatives it has, but it does decrease firing delay by 25%. So in layman terms, that is, you fire, say you've got 3 rockets in the magazine, you will fire them faster, 25% faster than if you didn't have bipod. So it's a small plus to the 5 negatives, but bipod is just not doing it. I'm very curious what they will do to bipod. But yeah, this rocket launcher, despite it being high impact, does have some interesting potential. You mentioned something there about cluster bomb. So cluster bomb is around about 3% increase of damage per bomb that connects back onto the combatant. And there's 8 cluster bombs. For all intents and purposes, cluster bombs are just Wolfpack rounds, but they don't track, and they spawn and then they explode, and they do explosive and impact damage to get that 3%. So if all 8 of those bombs connect, that's a 24% increase. However, it's great on paper. In practice, you're not getting those 8 bombs to connect back onto a target unless it's Riven, because the way Riven's fight is where you do damage into a concave hitbox, those cluster bombs connect back into Riven, whereas you don't have that with, say, a big target. Think of Rulk or Nezarec, where it's just one tall boy. They're not going to get those cluster bombs to connect back.
You're going to get 3 or 4 out of your 8
at max,
right?
If you're really lucky. So it's a lot of theoretical science going on here when it comes to cluster bombs. I'm very grateful that cluster bombs is in column 3, because I think cluster bombs can be a great kind of ad clearing perk anyway, and because high impacts are all about ad clearing, then you could go down the route of cluster bomb destabilizing rounds. Cluster bombs do inherit the damage increase, so frenzy will increase those cluster bombs if they connect back in. Chain reaction, if you can get those cluster bombs to kill other combatants, and then you've got a chain reaction. You don't get the chain reaction into cluster bomb back into chain reaction back into cluster bomb. It doesn't work like that, but you've got a much larger radius. So if you want to play into, I'm going to use rocket launchers as a ad clearing device, then go for it. Cluster bomb, chain reaction. That's my recommendation. But it's just this bipod, Envious Assassin, or field prep, which is interesting me for science, as Impetus said, but it's a high impact rocket launcher. I'm not bringing this into damage scenarios. And to be honest, I'm just not really interested in this rocket launcher. I've seen a lot of commentary, whether it's been Twitter or the Discord servers, of people being pretty excited for this. I'm excited for this particular weapon because of the science, but when it comes to practically using it in game, not interested. So it's a bit of a scaling review for me, but I'm holding out hope for whatever they do to bipod.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a couple episodes ago, but it's currently at about 40%, and if that was reduced to about 20, we would be in a pretty strong spot of where bipod would at that point be a aggregate damage increase in some of the other weapons where we've been comparing it to. And I feel like that really does hurt it, because that's this one really unique trait set that it has to offer, and unfortunately bipod just didn't launch in a strong state this season, which is tough to see. I'll definitely be going for hopefully a field prep cluster or bipod roll, and then probably like a cluster bombs chain reaction or like cluster bombs frenzy, just because like it's unique. I'm a sucker for unique, but like you're saying, I'm not bringing cluster bombs chain reaction into a DPS phase. I'm using that thing when I'm just farming out some strikes and I want to have some fun. And that does sound like a fun roll
for potential GM kind of GMs that are very ad dense. Then I could see a use case of this. We're not necessarily looking for DPS options when it comes to some GM bosses, but I'm thinking of like the Mars GM battleground. In some of the various rooms, I could see some use for this rocket launcher. But that 40% on bipod is just too much, and because this is a high impact, it's already at a net loss on top of bipod, bringing it down by 40% compared to, say, Apex or Cold Comfort, which can also roll bipod.
Yeah. Hopefully we hear some more details on the changes to bipods soon, and hopefully it's honestly cutting that damage reduction in half. All right, I think it's time we move on to our other half of our weapon breakdown today. We got some Trials weapons. Impetus, you want to kick us off here on our Trials weapon set?
Yes. So again, none of these weapons we're about to mention are craftable. They do have an adept version. We're going to start things off with a high note, a weapon that made a very big splash last season. This is going to be the Immortal SMG, the Strand Aggressive Frame SMG, firing at 750 RPM. Do have Alacrity and One Quiet Moment. This also does come with a third origin trait that is field tested. Going to be honest, good luck getting this one ranked up here. So defeating targets or dealing damage with the weapon gradually increases range, stability, handling, and reload speed. The word gradually here is a complete lie when we're talking about primary weapons. You will need for the 5 stacks here, it's 1 through 5. First stack is going to require 51 hits. Okay, that's pretty doable. Second's going to be 151. Third is going to be 351. Fourth stack is going to be 651 hits. And the fifth stack, don't even worry about it. You will never hit it unless you are attempting to probably solo a raid boss. You might get... Actually, no, the damage phases aren't even long. Yeah, you'll never even hit the fifth stack. You don't need to worry about it. It's 1,001 hits for primary weapons. I have no idea why it is that high. You do get some stat buffs, but again, you're probably only going to be hitting maybe one stack of field tested before you gotta swap over to something else. So probably best to just stick with Alacrity or One Quiet Moment, because you'll get those to proc a lot faster. But that's enough about field tested. Let's talk about our archetype peers. This is our first Strand Aggressive Frame SMG, so I will be comparing it to some other slot peers. That's going to be Extraordinary Rendition, all the way back from Season of the Chosen. That is only dropping in Dares of Eternity, or I think Zur or Banshee can now sell it as well. That's Kinetic. And then Blood Feud, also dropping from Zur and Banshee. That is a Stasis 750. So let's talk about the stats here. This thing is a little bit of a stat monster. We're looking at 40 range. That is actually middling. Rendition does go up to 42. Stability at 25. That is highest by a hefty margin. The next highest option here would be Blood Feud at 11. Handling 58, that is the highest. Rendition at 55. Reload speed of 30, highest. Again, Rendition next highest at 22. So this gun feels good, and it also has little element competition at the moment, so you should go grab a copy of this in Trials if you can. Doesn't have to be the Adept version. Definitely pick this one up here. When we're looking at barrels, I mean, nice thing with that massive stability stat is you can afford to tank that a little bit. I'm normally someone who likes to run full bore on 750s, and I definitely should recommend doing that on the Immortal, because you'll still have 15 stability with that minus 10 of full bore, which is still going to be quite comparable, right? That's still beating out Blood Feud, which had 11 stability. So that is how much this thing is a stat monster. You can run full bore and you're still beating out the competition. So definitely do full bore. If you are somebody who can't afford to hurt your stability in any way, I think small bore would be an excellent option. You really want to work on that range, maybe Hammerforge rifling if you don't want to touch stability at all. Again, this is a close quarters weapon here, so we want to make sure that we're dealing as much damage as far away as possible while still keeping the gun feeling okay. On to column 2, I'm going to recommend any of our 3 rounds perks. I think there's a solid argument for all 3 of these at some point in PvE. Moving on to column 3, this is where things get nice and spicy. We've got Perpetual Motion, Threat Detector, Surplus, just excellent options here. All 3 of these will make the gun feel incredible here. Perpetual Motion at ×2, gonna give you a 45 stability, 78 handling, and 50 reload speed. You want to take that over to Threat Detector. This is where things get crazy good. 65 stability, 100 handling, 85 reload speed. And then if you want to do Surplus, And again, this being a strand weapon, you want to pair that with your strand ability kit. You're going to have a lot of extra charges to take advantage of surplus. Those 3 stacks of surplus sitting at 50 stability, 100 handling, 80 reload speed. So you proc any of those 3 perks, perpetual, threat, or surplus, you're going to have a sweet feeling weapon on your hands. So let's look at our damage perks here. Really, there's just 2 that I'm looking at here. Target lock, that's definitely what's been tearing up the Crucible this past season and a half here. And then our more strand-related one would be Hatchling. So I do have a threat detector Hatchling roll. That was what I was chasing last season, and I did get it. It feels incredible to have threat detector ×2 up and then have my little bugs with me here ripping enemies apart when we're standing right next to them. So that is definitely the combo that I recommend. Demo's also in column 4. You know, that's great for getting those grenade charges back, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of demo in column 4. I'd rather just wait for it to show up in column 3 on a different strand SMG. So Hatchling is the one that I'm definitely going to recommend. Do you guys have anything else that you would recommend for Immortal? Anything in column 3 that stands out that I haven't mentioned?
I was just going to say that I kept Threat Detector Target Lock originally for the Crucible. This is the last time I seriously played a lot of Trials was the weekend that this weapon premiered. But I ended up using Target Lock a little bit on my Strand Titan when I was on Neomuna and doing some various activities. And honestly, when you were in a pretty good level delta, not negative level delta in an activity where you at gonna have some tough enemies, Target Lock feels pretty good in PvE. It's not like the premier PvE perk, I wouldn't say on like primary like this, but when you're like you focus down a target, you're getting that damage ramp up from about 16% to usually about 35% because you're not going to hit the 5th stack without an ammo perk. But yeah, it feels pretty good to use in PvE. And the big thing, I'm a hoarder. This is known, but I've been sitting on a Hatchling roll, and Threadlings are poised to get a buff in PvE, and I feel like this thing could be eaten good. Threat Detector Hatchling roll is going to be quite strong in PvE. It could be quite strong in the very near future. Court?
Yeah, Target Lock is definitely... I wouldn't say it's underrated when it comes to PvE. That's not the right kind of... the vibe that I'm going for here, but a lot of folks kind of dismiss Target Lock, but for just staying on target, it's free damage. So, Kill Clip requires you to reload. Focus Fury requires you, kind of the same vein as Target Lock, stay on target, but it has to be precisions. Not going to happen with an SMG. It's not much worth. And then obviously Hatchling is our kind of elemental perk here. So yeah, Target Lock is, if you've got one lying around, then know it's been getting kind of its wings clipped for PvP, but PvE, free damage. Interesting you mentioned demo in column 4. I was just looking at SMGs that roll demo in column 3, and funnily enough, No Survivors, which we talked about last week, has demo in column 3. Also an aggressive, it's solar, and also Unforgiven from last year, our Void aggressive frame. If you're not interested in aggressive frames, the lightweight frame Out of Bounds, it's the Omelon Crucible SMG from last year, also has it. Pretty gonna, it's 12 by 12 perk pulls. It's not something you're going to get immediately, but those playlist weapons can be focused now, and you can get up to 3 perks as well on each column. Yeah, like it's a juiced weapon, the Immortal, both in PvP and PvE. And yeah, for me, I think either perk motion, threat detector, target lock, which I think I have. I think it's threat detector and target lock that I've got, but I would like to get a hatchling roll as well. Yeah, good weapon.
Man, that out of bounds that you mentioned, that is a juice weapon. I feel like I don't know if we've ever given a review in that thing, but I've got one that is demo in either AJ or Golden Tricorn, and I mean, if I'm not using the Nicholas SMG, I'm using that thing.
That's the role I've got. I think we did talk about
so
it
good
because that was Plunder that came out. I'm sure I can remember talking or at least
been a few seasons.
mentioning it. Just with it again, golden tricorns is one of my favorite perks.
I do
All right, we
want to
had
say
a
one
weapon,
last thing,
go ahead.
actually. Sorry to cut you off here,
No,
Saint.
go ahead.
We've got one other Strand SMG in the game at the time of this recording. That's Synchronic Roulette from the New Muna destination. It's a destination weapon. It does also have Target Lock and Hatchling in Column 4, but you don't really have any great perks in Column 3. So if you are somebody who's just, I'm never going into trials, I'm not interested at all, you've got one other Hatchling or Target Lock Strand SMG available to you. It's Terminal Overload weapon specifically here, but yeah, you don't have, I mean, Pulse Monitor, Keep Away, Envious Assassin, but that's a primary, so not a great option here. Yeah, do not have a lot of great reload perks on that gun. So just want to bring that to your attention. You know, there is an alternative, but it is vastly inferior and will not serve you as well as the Immortal, either in PvP or PvE. So, all right, Saint, sorry, back to you now.
No, you're good. I mean, it's such just a way. You know, you want to grind out the difficult activities, you get the good stat packages. You want to play the public events, maybe not so much. You know, but it's worth the price you pay for those juiced up stats. We've got another weapon that I think just came back this past weekend. We were recording this about a week ago for the first time, and that is the Messenger. This has Alacrity and One Quiet Moment, and is a kinetic high impact frame pulse rifle at 340 RPM. This is a weapon that has honestly, it's been good since it originally came out, and it keeps seeing updates, and it keeps being viable, right? It just keeps getting updated with new great traits, and has kind of kept it in the top part of the sandbox here for a long time. Whenever we look at its base stats, it has very bad recoil direction and pretty much just knocks everything else out of the park in every other stat category. So arrowhead break, and you are on the way to a just absolutely S tier weapon. Specifically, that recoil direction is going to be 60, so arrowhead break would take that up to 30, and it's also going to give your handling a 10-point boost, which is going to take it from 31 to 41. High impacts obviously are kind of, you know, that is their archetype nature to have a pretty low handling, so that is always going to be nice. Whenever we look at the mag, honestly, yeah, I mean, again, we're just, you know, we're thinking about maybe some stability, some range. The range is going to be really good. It's 66 points right out of the gate. But probably any of the rounds perks, a good old armor piercing, you know, high cal, what have you, are going to be really strong options across the board here. Whenever we look at our main traits, again, this is a weapon that's seen many iterations over the seasons. Right now, we are looking at Perpetual Motion, Rapid Hit, Outlaw, Under Over. Fourth time this perk appears in Column 3. And then in Column 4, we've got Desperado and Kinetic Tremors. Pretty interesting options here. Court, what are you looking for on our current iteration of the Messenger?
I mean, to be honest, I'm not really a big fan of kinetic pulse rifles, especially high impacts. But if I was to choose something, I think we mentioned kinetic tremors earlier on. I think this is a good option to bring in. Yes, it does require those 12 bullets, but with it being a pulse rifle, you only need four kind of trigger pulls, as opposed to 12 with a sidearm. Rapid Hit, Desperado makes its big return. Obviously, you'd maybe want to, if you're killing a lot of ads, you'd combine it with Outlaw instead of Rapid Hit, but they do both synergize with Desperado. Yeah, I don't have much really to say here. Unfortunately, this is just a personal preference when it comes to high impacts, especially when it kinetics. But I think for me, either kinetic tremors or Desperado. It's just kind of that's your Saint. You mentioned like unique roles before, but yeah, Desperado was always a fun perk to see. We've seen it on a few other weapons and other weapon types like sidearms, but yeah, Desperado and kinetic tremors. Imp, are you? What are you looking when it comes to messenger?
Definitely not a need to have weapon for me. I can craft a Chattering Bone with kinetic tremors if I really want a pulse rifle with that perk, but the combination of under over kinetic tremors does seem kind of interesting to me. Ripping through those shields. I mean, I think under over when it's in column 3 is definitely a perk to be in the conversation, but so often it just ends up in column 4 where I have no interest for it. But yeah, I mean, Desperado, I do use it in PvE. I know a lot of people kind of scoffed at me when I first told them that, but then it got nerfed in PvP and it was kind of like, well, what other option do you have? It's definitely a feel-good, high-hitting weapon, damage perk, I should say, on this weapon. But I can craft... what's that stasis one that came out in Season of the Seraph? That also has Desperado, and you get enhanced Desperado. So I don't really see it as like a reason to chase on Messenger necessarily. So yeah, it's Connect Tremors for me. Under Over would be kind of cool to have just to see how that plays out with the Kinetic Shockwave. But yeah, it's probably like Rapid Hit, Outlaw, or Perpetual is what I would go for. How about you, Saint?
Disparity is the stasis.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably I'll be playing next time this comes around. I'll test the waters in some trials a little bit. You know, I dabble in a little PvP. Honestly, I'm really looking for some PvP roles there, focused mainly. But the rapid hit kinetic tremors is it's decently appealing, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of to the point of it's 4 bursts instead of 12 total trigger pulls. It makes it feel not quite as bad. You know, you have to kind of, if we're like thinking about these as a percentage of the magazine, right? You're looking at about 30 bullets in your mag, 31 bullets in your mag. So you got 10 trigger pulls. Okay, I'm taking 4 trigger pulls to trigger kinetic tremors. Well, now that doesn't feel like so bad, right? I'm using a chunk of my magazine, but not necessarily 75% of my magazine to get that perk going. I'm not, I know that they mentioned there's a few traits that are kind of being looked at. Was Under Over in that list because I love the idea of Under Over, but the practicality of it, it's just worse adaptive munitions is like the feeling that it leaves me with, which is tough. And I wish that Under Over was just a slightly stronger trait, because then I think that would have much more appeal. I definitely agree that it is like an interesting option. I wish it was a little bit of a stronger option, and I think that it could use a slight buff in PvE. I don't know.
It's good that Under Over is in column 3, yes, and I think actually this is a good opportunity to mention Under Over. So I'm going to kick myself for not remember who brought this up fairly recently, but it is on Foundry, so it's been updated. But originally we thought it was 10% to everything for all kind of shielded targets, but it's been updated to be, it's still 10% for elemental and barrier champion shields, but it's 34% PvE combatant overshields. So your Lucent Moth overshields and the Shadow Legion tech pack, the ones that the kind of cast an overshield. And versus players, it's 20%. So that's a little kind of update and an addendum when it comes to Under Over. So yeah, great that it's in column 3. That would be a great choice if that does roll, because we see pulse rifle anti-barrier pretty much every other season. Like we've had anti-barrier pulse rifle, like what was it, the 3 seasons prior to this one? We don't have it this season, but 3 seasons before, I'm sure we had anti-barrier pulse. They like making it, and I'm okay with that. I do love my pulse rifles for barrier champ stunning, especially when it comes to Outbreak Perfected. But
Yeah, plus you get a armor piercing rounds on that for an extra
5%.
3%, 5%. Yeah. Hey, that's not bad. There's definitely an argument there. And I remember the duality pulse rifle was it kind of had this really interesting proposal where it had adaptive munitions on a stasis weapon, but it was in the fourth column. And that's where Headstone was.
Yep.
Right. And I like that was just kind of a bummer. I think that if it had adaptive munitions in the third column and could still roll Desperado and Headstone and the other stuff in the fourth column, that would be a go-to Nightfall weapon. But unfortunately, that is not the case. Still a very strong anti-barrier weapon. Again, you pair that with the 5%, like Core said, from armor piercing. There's some great options there, but yeah, hopefully a little bump to under over. Interesting trait, decent, could be a great trait with a little bit of a buff.
Yeah. If we get anti-barrier pulse rifle, this gun with under over would be excellent in Master Ghost of the Deep. Because you've got a bunch of Lucent Moths and you have barrier champions. So Perk would be pulling double duty there. But very specific case scenario, I grant you.
If you also match the current surge, you'll also get the kinetic damage bonus as well. Not for the scope of this episode, but as the time of this recording, that's not currently working. That was something I noticed in the Destiny Science chat today, where the kinetic damage bonus is apparently non-existent. So shout out to Rock for discovering that, and hopefully that gets fixed. But when it does, then this thing's going to be shredding those barrier champions and Lucent Moth overshields and all that jazz.
That was just sad to read.
Yeah. You know what's not shredding? Statistically.
And very sad to read.
Yeah, it's extremely sad to read. It's not shredding anything. Stats are bad. The perks are bad. It's Astral Horizon. So, yeah, this thing, it's down bad. More so than the Swarm, I think, to be honest. And, yeah. All right, let's just get this out of the way. So yeah, this is our Trials shotgun. It's not for PvE, so we're not going to spend too much time here. Again, this is not craftable. It's got the Alacrity and One Quiet Moment origin traits. It is a 55 aggressive frame shotgun. This is actually something we haven't really spoke about before because we don't tend to get a lot of aggressive frame shotguns, but the frame bonus is fairly unique, where on scoring a kill, you get a 0.75x fire recovery delay for 4 seconds. That's 25% faster between firing. So just make sure to get that kill, and that's the intrinsic bonus for the aggressive frame shotguns. But that's the only plus when it comes to the shotgun. So really, we're pairing it with Toil and Trouble is there maybe the closest competitor, pretty older kind of style Vanguard weapon. Which itself is also pretty down bad statistically. It's got worse stats than Toil and Trouble. We're not going to really go over each of them. Impact is 80, range 24, 27 stability, 28 handling, and 33 reload speed. Very low stat package here. For barrels and magazines, we're looking at small bore, just to kind of bring up the range and stability. That's kind of your classic. You've got Barrel Shroud, which is the plus 10 stability and handling. And you've got Full Choke, which is, aiming down sights, decreases the shotgun pellet spread by 3.75% damage, but also reduces precision damage by 7.6%. Probably me, small bore, just to bring up that range. Magazine, I think whenever we recommend shotguns, it's Assault Mag, which gives you that +5 to the RPM, but also +15 stability. There's a use case for Accurized range, which is 10 range. And then we get to the perks. Threat detectors here. We've got Slide Shot. We've got Pugilist in the third column, which is always nice to see. And in the column 4 slots, we've got 1-2 punch. Obviously, very useful if you want to pair that Pugilist. Vorpal Weapon, which is that 15% damage, with this being a special. We've got Cascade Points, and we've also got Swashbuckler. So yeah, another combo, Pugilist with Swashbuckler. But to be honest, yeah, this shotgun's not it. And I don't have much else to talk about.
I'm just going to use Wastelander, to be honest with you. That's it. That's all I got to say about this. 1-2 punch builds are a lot of fun. Wastelander's a lightweight.
It's craftable.
Saint, I'm surprised you didn't mention Conditional Finale.
Well, no.
Yeah, no, it's an exotic.
Just talking shotguns. Yeah, sure. But it's like the one thing that I feel like it really offers. What has Cascade Point? It's just I like Cascade Point is interesting for the idea of like shedding out some burst damage, but shotguns are just not. They're just not that guy, you know. They're just not in the place to be good burst DPS competitors.
Even if shotguns were in a good place right now, this would still be in a bad place. That's how kind of low expectations were setting for this. Yeah.
Yeah, to give you an idea of how bad this thing is, so Toil and Trouble came out 2.5 years ago, Season of Arrivals. We've since then had both Imperial Decree, which debuted the exact last season, the same time as Astral Horizon. But then almost a year before, we had Ragnhild. And Imperial and Ragnhild are both craftable, both same frame, both kinetic. And they've got like decent PvE perks. Nothing that's so far away from whatever Astral brings to the table, which is just Cascade Point. It's just Cascade Point. So if you really want, if the meta becomes Cascade Point aggressive frame shotguns, Astral, it is your time to shine. We will be so happy for you. But the chances of that very specific case coming to fruition is so unlikely that there's no reason for you to go and farm this in Trials. Certainly not an adept version for PvE. Again, maybe save some Trials engrams and spend them at Saint if it ever comes to a Cascade Point shotgun meta. But yeah, beyond that, there's nothing. This gun's trash.
What's so weird to me is that Imperial Decree was it's just as good as Astral Horizon, and it just came from a seasonal. Even I'm like, okay, like side bar here, you're talking Crucible. It can roll the same exact like threat detector opening shot. It's got just as good stats. It can get the little stat bumps when you hit a high level, and it came from seasons and not trials. And that just makes no sense. It's like we were just having this conversation about Synchronic Roulette and the Immortal. Okay, yeah, one of them's like pretty good. It's got some okay traits. It comes from a World Drop public event thing that you can go do on the Amuna. The other one is from Trials. It's got slightly better traits and really juice stats. Okay, that like makes sense from a loot economy standpoint. That one just, it doesn't even, yeah. All right, that's all I gotta say.
Imperial Decree is also craftable.
Yep.
So
yeah.
It just completely invalidates Astral Horizon, and that's the one. I don't mean to bring up the whole kind of crafted versus something that you chase, but that's one thing where I'm just like this just completely invalidates a weapon, and if it absolutely has potential. Yeah, shotguns aren't in a great spot, at least in PvE. I don't use shotguns a lot unless it's an exotic, but the shotguns have the potential to have that close range DPS, but Astral Horizon just doesn't have it. Whereas, you look at Imperial Decree, which you can craft, it's got a nice selection, surrounded there, so it's an automatic 43% increase of damage when you enhance that, and it's just nuts, bonkers. Trench barrels there as well. So it's down and out. It's dead on arrival. Completely.
Yeah. All right. Impetus, you wanna kick us off on our last weapon, something much more interesting that I think does have some viability here.
Yes, the renowned PvP weapon archetype glaives. We do finally have a Trials glaive, to the excitement of every Trials streamer I've ever seen. This is Unexpected Resurgence, an arc adaptive glaive. Got a lot of adaptive glaives in the game. It's the first frame that ever came out. We've just now got our first lightweight this season. We do also have one other aggressive frame glaive. So there's a lot of competition in this slot, but Unexpected Resurgence comes out on top. It is best in slot across elements. There is one exception, which is the only other arc glaive, that's Resurgence Whisper, has one more point in the magazine stat. That is the only stat that Unexpected Resurgence actually loses to. It beats out, doesn't even tie, it beats out every other adaptive glaive in every other stat. So yeah, this is a banger right here. We have halves instead of barrels on glaives here. So again, adaptive, you're going to have pretty much, a good selection across all your different stats here. Nothing terrible, nothing exceptional. So you can play around, again, because you can't craft this. This is all going to be random drops. You can be pretty forgiving with whatever happens to drop on your rolls of Unexpected Resurgence when it comes to the halves. But if we're ideally talking what we can get here, I think auxiliary reserves make some sense here. Get that longer shield duration at the cost of a little bit of reload speed. But again, we've got perks in column 3 that can make up for the reload speed stats, so that's okay to take a little bit of a malice there. Other one I would probably look at would be Super Cooled Accelerator. That's gonna give you a little bit more range. Teeny hit to reload speed. Again, we can make up for that teeny bit of a hit to your handling, but it's already got 61 points of handling, and that's just a -5, so I think a 56 handling is going to be perfectly fine here for folks. And again, we can tweak handling with some perks a little bit later on here, so not a big concern to me. Moving over to the magazine, we're sitting at 4 shots in the magazine here, so you've got a pinned mag that will get you up to 5 if that's really necessary. Otherwise, you could go for Accurize round, get a little bit more range. You could do alloy mag for even a help to that reload speed if you want. Light mag for some stat bumps as well. Light mag's probably my top choice here. I get a bump to my range and a bump to my reload speed, which is always nice on a glaive. Column 3 here, you got some interesting options. So auto-loading holster is going to be nice. Don't even have to worry about that reload speed stat. You can just stow it and get that taken care of. The other really nice one that we just got recently is Replenishing Aegis. That's blocking damage, partially reloads the weapon from reserves. That's really nice, really leans into the glaive playstyle a lot more than auto-loading holster does. So that's probably the one that I'm going to look for the most. Subsistence is on here. Glaives are strong. You definitely could get subsistence running with projectile shots, but yeah, I think Replenishing Aegis just helps out a little bit more. It lets you use the glaive, play the glaive really to its strengths, I think is a better way to describe it. So, I wouldn't be bummed with subsistence, but ideally I'm looking for Replenishing Aegis. Column 4, we kind of open things up. You got your glaive specific perks, Unstoppable Force, Close to Melee, very strong options. Volt Shot is on here. You will need to reload the glaive. That will probably require a good bit of building into it. Yeah, I don't I don't quite know. Yeah, I don't think Volt Shot's going to be worthwhile. That not over a consistent period of time. If you want Volt Shot up, that is not worth the effort of having to manually reload your glaive after a kill. So I'm probably going to push against Volt Shot. You've got Frenzy. Again, that's going to really help out with your reload speed and handling. Be quite generous with those two stats. Surrounded makes a lot of sense on a glaive for how you want to use it. A lot of great options here. I can't really think of like one specific combo that stands out to me. Swashbuckler, I forgot to mention. That's also on here as well. Saint Kabr, do you guys see anything here that's really jumping out? There's a lot of just great perks, and it's like if I get any combo of those, I'll be okay with it,
Yeah, it's really pretty open. Volt Shot, this is I'm definitely in line with what you're saying. Like Volt Shot initially jumps out, and then, but I'm not sure if like that's what I would really land on. Right? It's kind of a novelty thing. You could run like Impulse Amplifier and Volt Shot, and that's it's like it's unique, sure. But to your exact point, there's definitely some other options on here that I'm more interested in. I'm really interested in like again, we've got Replenishing Aegis and Close to Melee, right? Which is a very strong combo on Arc. And I was talking about this a little bit at the very beginning of our episode, whenever we were talking about, what's going on, what are we up to in Destiny right now, and when you have a seasonal trait like Shock and Awe, arc funnel blows while you're amplified, summon a burst of lightning that damages and jolts targets. You don't even need Volt Shot. You could be using like close to melee, like I'm saying, and when you get those projectile kills, you're having these explosions. You could use, I think it's Spark of Brilliance for the blinding effect after that, which is like very strong. Yeah, Forbearance and the Trace Rifle are really good options, but this is a fun one too. And glaives are strong in-game options in the right hands.
Anything to add, Court?
No, you guys pretty much stole my thunder here. I think, replenishing Aegis, and I think close to melee is definitely something I'm most interested in, because all these other perks like Frenzy and Surrounded, they do not increase your glaive melee damage. It's all your projectiles. So if you're kind of building into being up close, personal, bringing up your shield and then whacking, then it's something you'd want to pair with close to melee. But Volt Shot's a bit of a trap perk here. I was just going to bring up so this was before Unexpected Resurgence even made it to the Trials loot pool, but they did fairly recently, a few updates ago. They moved Impulse Amplifier from the column 4 slot to column 3, and they added Swashbuckler and Volt Shot to the right column tree. So Volt Shot was added in, but I'm not terribly interested with Volt Shot with a glaive. And something that I may well chase after. Glaives are pretty fun in PvE sandbox, and this does have some really great perks.
By far the toughest to maybe justify going after, because Nezarac's Whisper was craftable, and you did get demo in column 3 on that. I know that's what I have on mine. You get Adrenaline Junkie. You could also get Unstoppable Force or Frenzy. If you have that already, it's going to be really tough for me to say, hey, you should probably go get Unexpected Resurgence, unless the stat package on Nezarax was just unbearable for you, which, it's definitely less than Unexpected, but it's still fine. And especially the column 3 and column 4 combos there were great for PvE. But replenishing Aegis and Unstoppable Force, is that better than Demo Unstoppable Force? You could probably make arguments either way for how you get bullets back, but Arc Glaives are definitely in a great spot right now. There's 2 very good options. If you don't have access to Nezarac's Whisper, Unexpected Resurgence will definitely be the one and only Arc Glaive that you probably will need for the foreseeable future if you want to go and get a PvE combo with that. But I'd say if you've already got Nezarac's crafted, unless you really like playing PvP, don't think you need to go and get this. But you know yourself and what roles you want better than we do, but they're pretty close in my book, so I don't feel like I need to go and grab this. I don't know. Do you guys? I know you guys have Nezarac's Whisper unlocked for crafting. Do you guys have a crafted role that you use? Do you like that more? Do you think you're gonna go get Unexpected or not?
This is another weapon where I'm like, I'll give it a run. I'll play a few cards. Right. I'm not super, I'm not going to just go crazy farming for it, but like it's enough to at least get me to go pick up a card and try to make a run with some buds, which is, that's, I definitely think that's kind of like our bar. Like, is this a weapon enough to make me go want to run a GM? Is it enough to make me want to try to make a run to the Lighthouse? And I think this passes that bar for Trials.
The Edge of Concurrence, which is the exotic hunter glaive, is kind of my although it's not Volt Shot, it's got that kind of arc flare when you fire when it's fully charged. And we know those exotic glaives are getting buffed in the future, so I haven't been using a lot of Nezarac's Whisper, even though I absolutely agree it's got some great potential. But as Saint said, I think I would probably do a couple of cards. I'm not eagerly kind of chasing after this, but purely because Nezarac's Whisper exists, I've got it crafted. I've got it to level 20, so I can pick and choose whatever I want and enhance them. I'll see where this lands. Has this dropped as a Trials loot so far this season, or is that still to come? Do we know?
I believe it was before the Messenger. It was 2 weeks ago,
okay.
I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, so coming up again at some point.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all we got for our kind of in-game weapons here of the season. Some highs, some lows, right? Some peaks and valleys. That's all we got for episode 68. Thank you for tuning in and supporting the show week after week. We, as always, want to thank our audio engineer, Autodidaktos, for keeping us sounding great every episode. If you've got feedback in the show, questions, specific trait combos that you think maybe we underrated a little bit, feel free to reach out to @MassiveBreakdowns on Twitter or jump into the Massive Breakdowns Discord, where we can discuss all kinds of Destiny traits, science, combos, and weapons, etc. My name is Saint Kabr. You can find me at Saint_Kabr on Discord, Twitter, game. Impetus, where can our listeners find you?
Yes, my name is Impetus. You can find me by that name in Discord and in Destiny, and as Impetus always on Twitter. Court, where can we find you?
Yep, I'm Court. You can find me over on Discord and Twitter as Court Projects. You can also find my information spreadsheets and infographics over on the Destiny Massive Breakdowns website, along with other applications and spreadsheets to enhance your Destiny experience. Next week, I think we'll be touching on Last Wish weapons because the rotator is coming back. So I think we'll looking forward to that one. But yeah, until then, see you later.